Hello, it's Dr. Renee Harmon, author of Surfing the Waves of Alzheimer's. It's a teaching memoir that does spell out the story of my husband's Alzheimer's disease at a young age, but it's also a teaching memoir. Each of the chapters is titled one of the caregiving principles that I learned along the way. And what I've been doing in this series is exploring a little bit of each of the chapters. So the fourth chapter is entitled, He's Not Giving You a Hard Time, He's Having a Hard Time. And I've already blogged about this on June 10th, 2020, so you can go read that on my website if you'd like. But what I'd like to do today is look a little bit into the practices. I end each chapter with a handful of practices that a reader might choose to do to dive a little bit deeper into that caregiving principle. Well, the chapter actually tells a long story, complicated story, involving three people who are living with dementia, as well as myself and caregivers, my brother-in-law. Anyway, it's a long story, and it's actually kind of funny on this side of its history, and I leave you to read it. But the principle is asking you as a caregiver to put yourself in the mind of your loved one. So one of the practices, I ask you to sit in your loved one's favorite chair, close your eyes, and imagine 24 hours from his or her perspective, right? So you might want to end it there. You might want to write down your observations. What I'm going to do now is just share three words that came to mind as I did this experience myself. So first was depression. So part of what made my life difficult at the time was Harvey's inability to talk about what was going on. And I think it was mainly because of his own coming to terms with his diagnosis, that he didn't have any need to talk about it with me. And it was hard on me, but it would have been harder on him to talk more about it. And that's where I came to that. Another realization I had is that he was probably anxious. This more closer in the middle stages of the disease, but I would notice when I came home from work, he oftentimes met me at the door, almost as if he had been there all day, wondering when I was going to come home, and he would say, "Oh, Renee, thank goodness you're home." And I can imagine how anxious he might have been, wondering if he was going to be left alone for a long time, if I was coming home, those kinds of things. So I think anxiety might have been a part of kind of some of the wandering and ruminating around. So, and that leaves me to boredom. I really think boredom was at the heart of a lot of the things that Harvey did that made my life very difficult. I would come home from work and find a grocery bag or a cardboard box filled with random objects. Or I might find that the file cabinet had been opened and all the files kind of scattered around the house. Some of the important papers had circling and underlining on them. And I came to realize that he was bored. He didn't know how to spend his days, so he probably wandered around the house, and I don't know what was going on in his mind, but he was filling his days with these activities. So just knowing that was probably what was going on, rather than an intention to make my life difficult, really helped me understand. And once I understood that, I left some small tasks for him to do while I was at work. Eventually, I hired caregivers to be with him, and I enrolled him in a respite care program. Keeping a routine actually helps anxiety and boredom tremendously if they know what to expect during the day. And just bringing in friends or paid caregivers to interact with your loved one can also combat some of those feelings and keep them more focused and less likely to create havoc in your life. Thank you. Be well and keep your balance.